The Roman Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in world history, and for its time, likely the most powerful in the world. Its capital city was one of the first cities in the world to reach a population of 1 million, and the empire itself lasted in one form or another for over 2,000 years, with its influences still seen around the world to this day. So just how powerful was the Roman Empire in its heyday? Brought to you by thearmchairhistorian.com, a new streaming service for history YouTubers. More information at the end of the video. A few months ago, I made a video about superpowers. Again, not physical superpowers, but geopolitical superpowers, in which I highlighted the US and the rising potential influences of China and India, and even the somewhat faded influences of Russia and Britain. However, if I were to have made that video around 2,000 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible. Haha, great observation, smartass. Okay, if I were talking about what the world was like 2,000 years ago, I would mostly be talking about Rome, though I'd probably also be talking about Han Dynasty China, to be fair. This is because the Roman Empire, or as the cool kids call it, Romany, was arguably the most powerful pre-colonial empire by far, at least in Europe, and depending on your criteria for powerful. And they changed the face of Europe in such a way that is, in a sense, virtually unimaginable. So how did Rome get to be so powerful? Well, for the first 300 or so years after the city of Rome was founded in 753 BC, Rome was actually just a tiny city-state in the middle of the Italian peninsula. It was essentially a Latin city-state, the same way that Athens and Sparta were Greek city-states. So this wasn't unusual in the Mediterranean world of the time. However, after Rome was sacked by Gallic forces in 390 BC, Rome eventually started to expand throughout the peninsula, eventually becoming rivals with the Carthaginian Empire, who had already set up a massive sphere of influence in the western Mediterranean. This expansion would become known as the Great Thickening of... Seriously, who writes this stuff? 3 Punic Wars later, however, and Rome eventually came out victorious after learning how to actually fight at sea, allowing it to expand throughout the rest of the Mediterranean world, conquering Gallia, Hispania, Britannia, the Balkans, Anatolia, the Levant, Egypt, Numidia, and briefly even controlling parts of Germania, Armenia, and Mesopotamia. By its territorial height in 117 AD under Emperor Trajan, or Trajanus, the empire had a population of around 70 million, over a quarter of the world's population at the time, and had entered a period of peace and stability known as Pax Romana. Although this roughly 200-year period of time, from Augustus's ascension to power in 27 BC to Marcus Aurelius' death in 180, still saw wars and rebellions, it was a period of exceptional peace and stability throughout the empire when it was at the height of its power. One of the sources of Rome's strength and longevity were its foundations, and especially how well it effectively standardized many aspects of law and culture across the empire. Rome also frequently controlled a network of client states. Often, especially during the Republic, Rome would initially incorporate foreign states as subservient puppet states, not exactly part of Rome, but not exactly not part of Rome. These were usually either allied states or foreign enemies who were defeated in battle, and now paid a tribute to the Roman emperor. Even then, those territories which became provinces were still allowed to keep their local traditions, with said traditions often even being combined with Roman traditions. See, you have Sulis, we have Minerva. Boom, Sulis Minerva. It's almost as if you were Roman this whole time and just needed time to realize it. So how did Rome compare with the other powers of Eurasia at the time? Well, in 100 AD, the other powers of the world known to the Romans would have been Han Dynasty China, the Kushan Empire, and most of all, their main rival, the Parthian Empire. Rome and Persia were basically always fighting each other once they came within reach of each other. A series of conflicts that would simply be known as the Roman-Persian or Roman-Iranian Wars started in 54 BC and was passed down to the Eastern Roman and Sasanian empires before finally ending in 628, around when Persia was conquered by the Islamic Caliphate. These wars were always a consistent drain on the resources of both empires, and the two even frequently made alliances with many of the states and tribes caught in between the two, notably Armenia. Rome also had intermittent contact with China, but mostly indirectly through the Silk Road, as Chinese silk became commonplace in Rome, as did Roman glasswork in China. Rome also had vast influence over the Germanic tribes north of the border, mostly trading with them, but many of them even learned to speak Latin. Of course, the Roman Empire couldn't maintain its stability forever. Over the 4th and 5th centuries, the foundations of the empire started to gradually crumble due to loads of different factors, from economic crises to poor management to chain effects brought on by the arrival of the Huns. The empire's best strategy for growing economically was to grow physically, but its resources were eventually stretched too far and too thin, especially after conquering economically deficient provinces like Britannia. Multiple times during this time, the empire was split into 2 and even 4 pieces to be more easily governed. After the capital was moved to Constantinople, the west started to decline until eventually it was conquered in 476 and the Roman Empire lost, Rome. Of course, Rome has left a cultural legacy all over the world that really isn't seen with most other civilizations in world history. While there are plenty of equivalents in other parts of the world, Rome expanding as dramatically as it did and controlling its territories with such a tight grip for so long changed the history of Europe in ways that we can't even imagine, and therefore also their colonies. I mean, take a look at this building. This is the state capitol building of California, a state of a country on a continent that the Romans would never have even dreamed of. And yet it was still built in a kind of Greco-Roman style architecture and also has a statue of the goddess Minerva. Rome also invented and expanded concepts and inventions like citizenship, arches, aqueducts, concrete, road networks, and even the idea that someone on trial should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Honestly, it's kind of hard to imagine European society without all that. So, could Rome have survived? Well, really, it did until 1453, but in a quite different form. Then again, if the Western Roman Empire were to have survived more or less intact, it would definitely have had to make some changes. After all, gladiatorial fights and an imperial cult of personality wouldn't have exactly gone well in the 21st century. Then again, lots has happened in the past 2,000 years, so it'd be hard to say for sure. I could be wrong, but I also could be right. I don't know, a 21st century Roman Empire is way too complicated to think of. A really interesting scenario, sure, but not one I'd personally think about too much. It would give you a bit of a headache. This video was made with the support of thearmchairhistorian.com, a new streaming platform made by the Armchair Historian for history YouTubers to be able to make the videos that we want to make for you, all without ads or YouTube demonetization. The website features exclusive series from the likes of Alternate History Hub, Invicta, Mr. Beat, Overly Sarcastic Productions, and many other channels that you might know of. I myself am actually working on a new series for this website. It's a 3-part mini documentary series all about the history of propaganda. It's a bit more serious than my usual videos, but it's still definitely worth a watch, at least in my opinion. The first part is already out, so if you want to try the service out, click the link below and type in code KhAnubis75 for the first month free, and if you're one of the first 200 people to sign up, you will also get 75% off your second month. Also, if you're a patron of mine, you'll actually get the service completely for free. Just check the patron feed for the code. This website is only truly possible with your support, so please go and give it a try. Thanks for watching as always. Please give this video a like and also check out the special holiday merch that we have on sale in our store, link in the description. We have special beanies and themed ugly Christmas sweaters that will only be on sale for the holiday season, so be sure to get yours while you can. Of course, if you just want to support the channel, the best way to do so is by simply subscribing to learn something new every Sunday.